So this is what I call the polarity flowchart. Basically, it's going to help us figure out whether a molecule is polar or not. The definition of a polar molecule is one side has more electron density or has more electrons than another side. But this can help us if you're having difficulty figuring out the molecule, what it would look like in 3D. And the first question you would ask yourself is there a lone pair of electrons on the central atom? When you have a lone pair of electrons on the central atom, such as in molecules like water, for example, then the molecule is going to be polar, because what that means is that it's almost always going to have a non-symmetrical shape. And so since water has a lone pair of electrons on the central atom, we know it's polar. One side is going to be positive, one side is going to be partially negative. But what if there are no lone pairs of electrons on the central atom? So then you would go over here. And you would ask yourself a second question. Are all the outside atoms the same? So if I were looking at the molecule, this guy right here, and I was looking at this, although it has no lone pairs on the central atom, the outside atoms are not all the same. These fluorine are more electronegative than those chlorine. So this side of the molecule would be more negative than this side of the molecule. So yep, if the outside atoms are not all the same, then you would have a polar molecule. But if all the outside atoms are the same, it would be a polar molecule. So it would be, a non-polar molecule. So something like BF3. Right? That's an exception to the octet rule. It's stable with only 6 electrons. But because these fluorine are all pulling electron density away from boron, but with exactly the same force in exactly opposite directions, 120 degrees from each other, this is like a tug of war that no one is winning. So this would be a non-polar molecule. So if you have to figure out whether a molecule is polar or non-polar, you want to be sure to ask yourself 2 questions. First, is there a lone pair of electrons on the central atom? And if there is, you know that it's polar for the most part. This works about 90% of the time. And if there are no lone pairs on the central atom, then you look whether the outside atoms are the same. And if the outside atoms are not the same, then you have a polar molecule. And if the outside atoms are the same element, then you have a non-polar molecule.